Now, before we get into this next movie topic, I do want to say there will be potential plot and character details that have emerged this week for Spider-Man Homecoming. So if you are watching the stream or if you're watching this on YouTube, you may want to drop out if you don't want to have any elements of the upcoming Spider-Man movie spoiled for you. So you've been officially spoiler warned. So I have to reload this page because some websites just don't know what to do with all of these different ads. We have been getting details, not at a super frequent rate for Spider-Man Homecoming, but we've kind of been getting them coming out every so often, and it's been confirmed to us that Vulture is going to be the villain, which makes me happy because I think Vulture is one of the cooler. Any villain that Spider-Man fights against that has a flying suit or the ability to fly with makes the fighting so much more interesting than just like Doc Ock. As cool as they made him in Spider-Man 2, it's a bit limiting when it's basically the same thing. Doc Ock tries to hit him with his tentacles and Spider-Man dodges. He might even web them up. There's not really much you can do with that. Whereas Vulture, you can do things. I think that's why they did the Goblin so many times in the movies, is because you can have him flying on his glider. Spider-Man can shoot a web over to him and kind of be, hanging onto his glider while he's flying and just do all these really cool acrobatic and aerial stuff. So Vulture is going to be the villain, played by Michael Keaton. Looks like he's playing Birdman again. And we're also going to get the Master Tech villain, the Tinkerer. Now, my experience with Spider-Man is mostly relegated to the 90s cartoon on Fox and the movies and the video games. I didn't know the Tinkerer was a Spider-Man villain. I think there's a DC villain called the Tinkerer that I might be thinking of someone else, but I thought the Flash had a villain called the Tinkerer. So he's not a Marvel villain that I'm at all familiar with. Are you?
Nope.
Okay. So at least I'm not alone there. And he's going to be played by Michael Chernus, possibly, who is in Orange is the New Black. And a third possible villain has been announced. The Shocker, who may be played by Bokeem Woodbine, who was in Fargo. I don't know if it's the original Fargo or the more recent Fargo miniseries. And it hasn't been officially confirmed yet, but those are the rumors that are coming out now. So, this movie, it's kind of getting a little bit heavy on the cast. We're already going to have Tony Stark. He's going to be, yes, Iron Man is going to be in this movie. Well, Tony Stark is. Whether or not he's going to make an appearance as Iron Man has yet to be seen. I'm all for it because I think since this is going to be his first solo movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it would make sense for him to need a little bit of help from a more seasoned hero. So I'm all for that. Of course, don't have him be in the entire movie. Maybe one or two scenes would be great. But so Tony Stark's going to be in it, and this movie has been described as basically like a high school movie. We're going to see Peter Parker in high school. It actually looks like he's in high school this time around. So that's great.
Yeah.
And with the now the history of the Spider-Man movies, to me is they range from really good, like I would say great, especially with Spider-Man 1 and 2. 2 is my personal favorite. To really lousy for Spider-Man 3. Amazing Spider-Man was all right. And then Amazing Spider-Man 2 was, I would put it somewhere between the first Amazing Spider-Man and Spider-Man 3. Have you seen that one?
The Amazing Spider-Man 2?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Yeah, but I more so liked it just because, I don't know, maybe it was because they didn't have a 30-year-old man playing a teenager this time, but there's just something about him that I feel like maybe if you were to talk to a bunch of other like people between the ages of like 16 and 19, just there's something relatable to him. Like I could relate to his character just being like, I don't know, a teenager or someone that kind of looked like a teenager. It just felt a little bit more relatable to him. And also his humor, I liked his humor a lot more.
So let's talk about this a little bit before we talk more about Homecoming. Um, I define the two actors, Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield. I feel Tobey Maguire played a better Peter Parker than Andrew Garfield, whereas Andrew Garfield played a better Spider-Man.
I'd agree. I'd agree with both of those.
I don't feel like and here's my reasonings. And a lot of it has to be or has to do with the way the films were set up. The original Spider-Man trilogy really focused a lot on Uncle Ben's death. And that's honestly what Spider-Man is about. I know a lot of people get tired of them constantly bringing up Uncle Ben's death. The same as Batman is about the death of Bruce Wayne's parents. If you want to sum it up, that is the initial cause for everything that happens afterwards for both those characters. And they happen to be my favorite character. Hello?
No.
That's weird. Try something. Testing 1 2.
Testing. Hello.
We back?
Yep.
We're
I
back.
think so.
That was a bit of a snafu there. All right.
At least the whole thing didn't crash this time.
Yeah. Anyway, so we were talking about Death of Uncle Ben. So yeah, those are oddly enough my two favorite superheroes: Spider-Man with Marvel, and Batman with DC. Um, and that's what it keeps coming back to for Spider-Man. It keeps coming back to Uncle Ben's death, him telling him with great power comes great responsibility, and him trying to live that out, whether that is through high school, college, his career, married to Mary Jane. Spoilers, that happens in the comic if you didn't know. What? They get married? And separated and all this kind of drama. Then they're clones, too. That's when Spider-Man gets dumb. But anyway, that is the essence of the character. And I feel like anytime they get away from it, which they basically did with Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2, that was downplayed. And I guess the reason why is because they're like, well, we did it in this set of movies. We shouldn't do it in these set of movies because everyone's tired of that. And that could be a fair point. But I do feel like that's really what sets Peter Parker up as such a relatable character, is having to deal with the death of a family member, and that completely legitimizes why he does what he does. Now, with Andrew Garfield, although He was definitely a better Spider-Man in the second Amazing Spider-Man. The first one, he kind of had like this attitude like I'm invincible. And Spider-Man is cocky. Spider-Man likes to quip and joke and throw out puns. The way he did it though, he did this like head bobble thing when he was like in costume that just looked really weird. Like especially when you first see him and he's like got the guy in the who's trying to steal a car. And he's like, oh, you think I'm a cop? Oh, yeah. It's like that scene annoys me to no end. By the end of the movie, he's a lot better. But that initial reveal, that and his suit was terrible. That's the worst suit I've seen in any Spider-Man movie. Was the first Amazing Spider-Man.
The suit was weird. However, that's probably one of my more favorite parts in the movie. Is when he's just messing around with that guy. It's like, oh, small knives, my one weakness. Just him playing with that dude, and like he's clearly like dealing with his emotions, but he's also trying to be Spider-Man, like goofing around. I don't know. I like the way that he messes with him because I feel like that's something I would do if I was in this position.
I liked what he did when he was like webbing him to the wall, and he was just kind of like messing with him, and then like webbing him up some more. That was neat. It was just a little bit over the top for me, I think. And speaking of over the top, what really kills Andrew Garfield's performance for me is the awkward hipster skateboarding guy who acts like this around girls.
Yeah.
He just does these really weird things in his scenes with what's her name? Gwen, but the Emma Stone.
Emma Stone.
Yeah. And I love Emma Stone. And that's the one thing I'm really sad about is since Amazing Spider-Man, the franchise is done, well, her storyline came to an end in Amazing Spider-Man 2. Won't go into spoilers for that, but there were still chances for seeing her in future movies. There's ways you can do that. I thought she played a really good Gwen Stacy, a whole lot better than what was in 3.
Yes. Yeah.
Much better. So, yeah. All that to say, those are how I rank the movies. So, how do those movies work? The first Spider-Man, the second Spider-Man each had one villain. Third Spider-Man, 3 villains. No one really likes that one that much.
There's a lot of reasons, though.
Yeah, but I kind of feel like that was the main one, that they were trying to juggle way too much stuff going on in that movie. And it makes it fall apart. Then Amazing Spider-Man comes along. You get back to one villain. The one thing I am really glad that they have not done is they have not recycled the same villain. And you can get into the argument of, oh, well, they still had Goblin from 1 and 3. No, those are really two different characters, and you see that in the comics. Like, New Goblin is, Harry taking up the mantle of the Green Goblin. So you kind of had to do that.
Plus, isn't Harry a different villain? Like, I thought he went by someone else other than the Green Goblin.
He might have later on, but I'm honestly, I have no idea who. The other thing is, where was I going with this? So, yeah, so you had the Lizard, who was also done really well, I feel, in The Amazing Spider-Man. That was great to see. Amazing Spider-Man 2, we got Electro and Rhino at the very, very, very end, and Goblin. Goblin is one I would like to see kind of not be done so much for a while, at least. He's kind of like, and this is my problem with the Spider-Man movies, or not Spider-Man movies, Superman movies. Can we have a Superman movie where Lex Luthor is not in it? Please. That's what I loved about Man of Steel. No Lex Luthor, completely different villain, But in literally every other Superman movie, we get Lex Luthor. I thought Gene Hackman was great in the original Superman movies. I thought, who is it? Kevin Kline played him in Superman Returns. I want to say that. And then get Jesse Eisenberg and
10 out of 10. Would choose again.
Oh boy. But yeah, that's what I can't stand about the Superman movies is like every movie, it's got to be Lex Luthor somewhere because people know him as a villain because Superman doesn't have much of a rogues gallery. But there are still some good ones out there. Just because people don't recognize them doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. There's Parasite, there's Livewire, there's tons that you could use.
Oh man, who was
Brainiac.
Brainiac?
Yeah. He's like one of the only people that actually, or villains that actually offers a real threat to Superman.
That was probably one of my favorite Superman villains growing up as a kid. Just because in the Justice League, like, not only was he a threat, like he made everyone in the Justice League, which was I think at the time like 7 or 8 heroes, like he beat them all.
Yeah.
Of course, they beat him again, but that's just because they had to in order to keep the show going. But
he's a serious villain.
yeah,
he's great.
Awesome.
Yeah, do that. Could you imagine like doing like a Superman movie that has like the visuals of Independence Day and the villain is Brainiac?
That would be cool.
That would be cool. Why don't they do it? I don't know. They're just insisting on making dumb movies over there at DC. I'm being really honest tonight. I'm sorry.
No, I mean DC, they need to hear it because.
So let's get back on track. Bring this all together now for Spider-Man: Homecoming. So we could potentially have the Vulture, the Tinkerer, and the Shocker. Here's how I think. So let's get the obvious out of the way. That may be too many people, too many villains for this movie to handle. Then again, this is Marvel. This is not Sony making the movie. This is Marvel making the movie. So I do have faith that they'll be able to juggle them. And let me get into the positives for this. So the thing about Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery, there are major villains and there are minor villains. And Shocker is definitely a minor villain. He's dumb. He never comes up with any real plans that are a threat to Spider-Man. He may be able to knock him out, but he's a petty thief who got some high-end equipment. That's his story. End of story. The Tinkerer, again, I'm not familiar with that character. He doesn't seem like a very recognizable villain, at least for moviegoers, so I don't know what they're going to do with him. They could make him also another minor villain, and I think it would work. No, I don't think there's a whole bunch of people out there like, man, if they underrepresent the Tinker, I'm going to hate this movie. I don't think anyone's saying that. The Vulture needs to be the main major threat in this movie. And I can't wait to see Michael Keaton in the role. Because you want to see someone who's an actor who could play someone who's unhinged. He's your guy. Even when he played Bruce Wayne and the original 1989 Batman, he has some scenes where he acts a little crazy. Have you ever seen that? Mm-mm. You should go back and watch it. It's not one of those. It's one of those movies that has actually aged very well, despite it being. We're coming up on 30 years. So they can't. And the other thing is, I feel like multiple foes for Spider-Man to handle, even though it was done horribly in Spider-Man 3. He normally does have multiple foes that he's facing at once. Like, especially going back to the cartoon, there was normally multiple threats, and that's when things got really interesting. when he would have like the Sinister Six that he'd have to take on, and have like 6 of his major villains there. And it turned out really well when he'd have to like fight all 6 of them at once.
That was something I was really looking forward to for the third Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah. Well, he's in Marvel's hands now. He's in good hands now. And hopefully what that means is that we're still going to see that. We're going to see, oh my goodness, I cannot wait for Marvel to do Venom. I can't wait for them to do Doc Ock. I can't wait for them to do all the classic Spider-Man villains well. Like, I can't wait for this to get off. But I think it could work with 3 villains. What do you think?
I think maybe if they do have all 3 of these in there, I feel like the Tinkerer is going to be more of like a background character. Because in the article it says that he provides tech for both the Vulture and the Shocker.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like maybe he's kind of like an underground just supplier.
And he's an ex-Stark Industries employee, so that's going to be a reason for Tony to be in the movie.
And I was thinking maybe like the Shocker and the Vulture, maybe like they both come at Spider-Man at the same time, and maybe the Tinkerer sends some, I don't know, weird things. I don't know a lot about him. Maybe he's doing something to help them, and the appearance of Tony will be like, oh, I'm going to go take care of that problem real quick. You handle those 2.
Yeah.
And then,
and
like,
split it up.
Yeah, we see Spider-Man take on the Shocker and the Vulture, and maybe, like, the Shocker is just kind of like, you know, that villain that's just kind of there for, like, maybe like 2 or 3 minutes of action, and then it switches to, like, the Vulture, and he's, like, the main antagonist. And then we show Tony going after the Tinkerer, and the Tinkerer's got, like, all these gadgets or something, and then Iron Man is just like, they're all gone. You're going to jail.
And the other... So... This reminds me actually of what they did really well in Spider-Man 3, and that was the finale battle, which I thought was done really well. You had Sandman get really huge, and then you had Venom, like actual Venom, despite the fact that they kept peeling away his face, so they didn't have.
I didn't like that.
I think they just did it to save on CG costs of animating the mouth, but. I'm sorry, that should have been the main villain. Sandman should have been dropped in the interest of just having New Goblin and Venom. Should have left it there. But the scene where Harry shows up and you get kind of the whole, and that's another thing about the Spider-Man universe that's really neat, is there's several times when just Spider-Man and a villain like Venom have a common goal and they team up. That's really interesting to see. That never really happens with Batman or Superman. It happens with Spider-Man almost all the time. They actually made a video game called Spider-Man Friend or Foe, which was a pretty substandard beat 'em up, but it kind of focused on that, like, hey, when you beat a villain, they join your team and you can have the computer AI control them or have a friend control them. And it was a neat concept. I think with this, so yeah, that was done really well with, you know, Peter and Harry taking on Sandman at the same time. And they were doing like combo moves together. I can't wait for that I really want to see that happen with Iron Man and Spider-Man. Seeing them do like combo moves. Because that's honestly like the coolest part of any of the Avengers is when you see 2 of them like basically doing a team combo move to each other. In the first one, it was that one really impressive shot that didn't cut away, and I think at one point like Iron Man lands next to Captain America and like does a beam off of his shield and like takes out a whole bunch of people. And then there's the other one where
Hulk and Thor.
Hulk and Thor, and then Thor and Captain America, with Thor hitting Captain America's shield into someone. Just so many cool things you can do. And Spider-Man is one of those characters that just his style of fighting blends well with anyone else's style. So I can't wait for it. This movie has got me really really psyched up. Um, it was kind of disappointing at the end of Amazing Spider-Man 2 how you saw Rhino for a total of 2 minutes of screen time, and Rhino is not one. I hope they don't do that with Shocker. Like if they make Shocker a minor villain who's maybe in the story for 30 minutes, I'd be okay with that. Maybe even less time. Um, but again, it's Marvel. I, I think they know what they're doing. I think they don't want a repeat of Spider-Man 3, and
No one wants that.
nobody wants that. And Spidey is in good hands.